Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Nathan Shapura, political advisor at the European People's Party. On behalf of the EPP, welcome to another episode of EPP Family Talks. Over the past several weeks, we've been talking with leaders throughout our political family to hear from them the ideas and projects they've been working on throughout this time of coronavirus crisis. Today, it is our great pleasure to welcome Mr. Ivan Štefanec, member of the European Parliament and president of our association, SME Europe. Mr. Štefanec, thank you so much for being with us and taking the time to speak with us this afternoon.
Thank you very much, Nathan, for invitation, and I'm so happy to be with you and to answer all the questions.
Well, President Štefanec, we've been asking all of our leaders just to start these interviews to tell us personally kind of how they're doing, how they're coping during this strange period. So I would ask you the same. How are you doing? What's the typical day for you been like during these past few weeks?
Thank you. I'm doing fine, relatively fine in comparison with others, because Slovakia is currently a relatively safe country. We have really strict measures here. So my day is basically at home, but it is fulfilled by online conferences. For example, this morning I started this EPP group meeting, then we continued with discussion with students in Slovakia, then I released press statement, and then I attended and contributed at webinar about useful apps in the European Union, and I'm happy to talk to you. So currently we are happy to stay at home. My wife and my dog are happy to have me here at home, but they are surprised all the time that I don't dedicate so much time to them because I have to still work.
That is one of the strange things about working from home, is it's easy to maybe work all the time at home. So maybe just pick up on what you said about being in Slovakia. So of course, your home country is Slovakia. You're representing our member party, KDH, or Christian Democratic Movement. Could you just update us what is happening now in Slovakia? I know that the country just celebrated its 16th anniversary of accession to the European Union. So just what's happening there on the ground?
Yes, we've got new government in place. So all people now, we are facing a special situation with new government, but so far so good. I have to say government is doing very good things. Government is, I have to say, EPP friendly, and we try to help to this government. There are really strict measures in place. We have to wear masks if we go outside. There are not all the shops open. Only there is a small and very, I would say, slight release of economy. But at the end, because of health reasons, Slovakia is not doing so bad. We have only 1,400 infected people. From this number, 700 cured and 25 fatalities. So it is not so bad in comparison with other European countries due to those strict measures. But at the same time, I have to say that we can feel some economical depression. So due to these strict health measures, we need to put now more focus on economical recovery. I have to say also that, as you mentioned, 16th anniversary of being in the European Union, Slovaks are very pro-European nations. We are in Schengen, we are in Eurozone, and people appreciate it very much. So currently there is a lot of discussion in place about current situation and about future of Europe, but it happens everything in online space, and most people stay at home. Those measures, strict measures, they are, I would say, relieved only slowly, and we push also for some European coordination in this case.
Let me just follow up on the issue of the economy in Slovakia itself before we get to the European level. I remember actually being in a meeting with you, I think it was about 2 summers ago, on a beautiful day on a hilltop or on a mountaintop in Bratislava, looking out over the river, and you were talking about how important for the Slovak economy small businesses and small farmers were. What do you see as the main challenges and the main things facing particularly small businesses and small farmers in Slovakia now?
Yes, this is really crucial because the situation in Slovakia, as in the whole European Union, is that 60% of jobs are created by small and medium entrepreneurs. And those people are mostly hit by current situation. Small companies, they don't have such reserves as big companies. So therefore, we pushed for immediate help from European level and also from national level to those companies. Since beginning of this crisis, I pushed also on the European level for small and medium enterprises, for their awareness and for their ability to use from European sources. This pressure is successful. So currently SMEs in Slovakia, and they are not in the best shape, like farmers, they are eligible to use Euro funds, they are eligible to use contributions for employment and also short-term loans with much better interest rates because of guarantees from European investment banks. This is also tangible results of our pressure on the European level. And I think we have to do all what we can in order to help those people, because we know that after this health crisis, economical recovery will be crucial.
Well, let's talk a little more about some of the issues at European level that you've been working on during this time of pandemic as president of SME Europe and as member of the European Parliament. Maybe before we get into some of the solutions at EU level, could you just tell some of our viewers who might not know what actually is SME Europe? What is your organization about? How many members do you have? How is it that you go about doing the important work of advocacy and networking that you do?
Yes, I'm really very, very proud to lead this organization, SME Europe, because it is a unique organization. I'm very happy to have this organization within our EPP family, because no other political family in Europe has a similar organization. We focus on SMEs. Our objective is to help SMEs to make better life for them, to remove all the barriers, and basically to help them to prosper. Through our member organization, we represent around 400,000 SMEs in Europe. As I mentioned, those are major employers, because probably they are not really very visible, but they are very important because of employment. And recently, our activity was to organize the survey among them. The results will be published actually next week, but we asked them how we can help them in the best way currently. And altogether, I would say the answer we can summarize in 3 points. First of all, we have to improve access to credit, because they don't have reserves. So we have to improve financial situation immediately, and speed is very important. Secondly, I think we have to work on much better regulations, let's say to remove unnecessary regulation from European level. And thirdly, last but not least, we have to ensure that single market works, because in current situation, many countries, they basically closed the borders, which is particularly for SMEs and particularly for small open economies, which is very difficult situation. And we fight for green lanes, we fight for free movement of people, particularly because it is very important for the economy.
So credit regulations and the single market working. My understanding is maybe these are things which are important all the time, and now in a time of acute crisis, they're even more important. I just wanted to read a quote from you, which recently caught my eye. You said, SMEs are the power cells of the European economy. At the same time, they are the most vulnerable to the economic cycles and bad government decisions. I know that recently your SME Europe, your group came together, I think it was via video conference, and you to discuss some of the problems, some of the solutions during this time of crisis. And you wrote, I think, a letter to Commissioner Breton as well, expressing some of your concerns. credit regulation, the single market, are these the issues that you focused on with Commissioner Breton, for example, or did you go even beyond these main points to something more specific?
Yeah, if I start from the end, regarding Commissioner Breton, we fight for internal market, which is our common interest with the European Commission. And the reason to write this letter to Commissioner Breton was to allocate also the resources which we predict for the program named Erasmus for Young Entrepreneurs. Very important, very useful program for our small companies. And now many of them, they cannot use these resources. Therefore, it's important to not spend this money for something else. So we have to keep these resources for young entrepreneurs and to allocate them in future after this crisis is gone. And I'm sure we will overcome the situation. Secondly, as you mentioned, the webinar with Valdis Dombrovskis, we stress out the fact for fast financial help for SMEs and for the improvement of access to credit. I'm happy to say that Mr. Dombrovskis, as Vice President of the European Commission, he understood very well these messages and he has prepared many useful programs and more guarantees for better financial instrument for SMEs. Last but not least, I think it's very important also to finalize projects which we have already started, but we have not finalized. And I mean like the project of Capital Union, which is very, very important for SMEs. We are talking once again about the access to credit, and we cannot rely all the time on the banking sector. If we finalize Capital Union in the European Union, I'm absolutely sure we would be able to improve financial situation of our SMEs.
Maybe just a very simple question, whether it's with the Capital Markets Union or other initiatives which you've been discussing with SME Europe and ideas you've been putting on the table. What are the next steps? What are the next steps in making these things happen and in recovering from this crisis?
Well, recovering from the crisis can be only together. Therefore, we have to cooperate much more on the European level, not only in terms of crisis management, but also in terms of future steps, future budget. I think next talk should be about recovery plan and about budget, basically financial perspective for next 7 years, which should be completely changed based on the changing priorities after Corona crisis. So on the first place, I would mention new priorities and new financial perspective. And we have to also think about employment, about digitalization, about SMEs in this perspective. I'm absolutely sure that we need a stronger European budget in comparison with previous version. That was also position not only my personal position, not only position of EPP, but position of European Parliament, that we were always fighting for more important and stronger European budget than national states. And I think we have to finalize this debate very, very soon. I think we need recovery package which is uncomparable with other situation. For example, like the situation 10 years ago. I think we have to be together right now, and we have to put all the resources behind economical recovery, which is not easy. Talking about financial perspective, I mentioned already Capital Union. I mentioned single market. We have to finalize single market. Very, very important for SMEs. We have to be very open. Single market is not functioning very well, particularly in area of services. We have to finalize it. We have to also build a digital single market, because digitalization will play more and more important role. And for competitiveness of European Union, completion of single market and finalization and of digital single market is very important. Last but not least, I would mention monetary union, because euro is our money, not only money, it is our currency, and we need very strong European currency. But at the same time, we have to be aware of the fact that euro is not the currency of every European state. Therefore, we have to prepare instruments also for non-Eurozone.
Maybe just one final question, or one final policy question anyway for you. That is, I know in addition to all the things you've mentioned with the Capital Markets Union and on the MFF and the various other initiatives you're doing as president of SME Europe, you're also doing other things as a member of the EPP group in the European Parliament. For example, I know you've been doing work on fighting corruption in agriculture. Is there any other project you're working on that you could highlight for us?
Yes, you're absolutely right. We are fighting against corruption in agriculture, which is still ongoing issue, unfortunately. But I have to say it is improving, and I am absolutely sure that our initiative is European prosecutor, which is a successful one. This initiative will improve situation, particularly in agriculture. I'm working also on the file of artificial intelligence, particularly on the intellectual property rights. Together with artificial intelligence, I'm working on the internal market issue, and I can give you one example which is very, very attractive, I think, for everybody, and which is easy to understood. We are fighting for single connector for all the mobiles and for all the electronic devices. I think this is, if it is successful, it might be as visible as, for example, removing roaming charges for phoning, for telephone expenditure. So I think we need to remove still all the barriers within European common market, and if we would have just one single connector for every electronic device, it would be, I think, not only less waste, electronic waste, but it would make life easier for all the people, and it can be visible also and tangible result of our common approach.
Removing roaming charges, one other example of an initiative led by the EPP family. So thanks for your work on that and all of these other initiatives. If we could, I would move now to a more fun part of the interview, a more informal, more personal, and I ask you some questions to help our family get to know you a little bit better. And the first one is, so we've talked about Slovakia's 16 years now being in the European Union. So the question is really just about history, historical perspective. Is there a historical figure that you have particularly in mind or that's been particularly helpful, let's say, or inspirational to you during this time of crisis?
Yeah, I would mention one great personality. His name is Milan Rastislav Štefanec. He died already 101 years ago. He was a Slovak politician, diplomat, general of French army. He was truly European. He was co-founder of Czechoslovakia at that time, and his credo was believe, love, and work. And he was very, very strongly he was strongly highlighting in all the situation basic values. And I think this is something what is necessary to also to remind today that even in times of crisis, we have to stick to the values. We in EPP, we have very clear values, and if we stick to these values, I'm sure we can overcome all the crises, even this situation.
Is there anything particularly interesting or helpful that you've read or watched recently, which you would recommend?
Recently, I read a very interesting book of Yuval Noah Harari, Sapiens. This is a world bestseller, but I would recommend it to everybody. This is really very inspirational book. Currently, I'm reading one political book, How to Beat Trump, which is also interesting from a political strategy point of view, not only for US, but also for European Union. I think there are many similarities in terms of political campaign and political work. And those two books I can recommend to everybody. And I have some of them, some more books which I'm ready to work, and I'm happy to work. I'm happy to read.
I've read *Sapiens* as well, and I can concur. It's very thought-provoking indeed. So the final question we have is hopefully a very fun one, and that is, you, like another one of our Slovak leaders, Miklas Dzurinda, president of the Wilfred Martin Center for European Studies, are a runner. We had the privilege of interviewing President Dzurinda last week, and he talked about his own, efforts during this period of lockdown training for a marathon. And I saw there was kind of a fun photo of you a few days ago doing an interview, and I guess maybe you were back garden with a coat and tie on the top, and then on the bottom your shorts and running shoes. So my question is, have you been able to keep up your running regimen during this period of lockdown? Are there any particularly good stories or bad stories that you have running in these last few weeks?
Oh, yes. Coming back to Miklas Dzurinda, my very good friend, we have common hobby of long running, particularly marathon. I have to say he is much better, but it happens that I was faster also. So we compete with each other. But now I have a strong competition at home. And if you mentioned this photo, at that time, it was on Saturday, I enjoyed time with my granddaughter, 3-year-old granddaughter, who loves running. He attends all the competitions and she loves running. We run together, but all the time she has to win. She is winner all the time. So she beats me, and I have more inspiration to run. Now I miss a little bit marathon contents because nothing is organized, but at least I spend more time with my family, and I can compete and improve my skills with my granddaughter.
Mr. Ivan Štefanec, member of the European Parliament, president of SME Europe, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Thanks so much for the work you're doing. And on behalf of the EPP, we wish you and your family all the best. And we hope before too long we can see you again soon in person in Brussels.
The same to you, Nathan. All the best to you and all the viewers, and to your family. Stay healthy. See you.
To all of our viewers, thanks for tuning in, and please join us again next time for our next episode of EPP Family Talks. We will be speaking tomorrow morning, Friday morning, on Facebook with Commissioner for Trade, Phil Hogan. Have a great afternoon and evening, and see you then.